So thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Mariana Hernandez. I'm the Assistant Program Manager of Workforce Development at LAEDC. And we have a career awareness webinar for you today in partnership with Studio-MLA and Jeremy. So we'll go ahead and get started with a few introductions before kicking it over to Jeremy. I am part of a team of three: Jeremy Hampton, who's our Senior Director, and Jose, who is on the call as well. You'll hear us speaking and answering any questions throughout. These webinars are brought to you about a partnership with the Los Angeles Regional Consortium, a project known as the LA19, which partners education with industry to provide these types of opportunities such as student webinars, internships, and advisory meetings for faculty and deans at the community colleges, as well as a workforce and education partner portal, which can be found on the link on your screen, competitiveworkforce.la. At the end, we'll have a feedback poll for you. So at this time, I'll go ahead and kick it over to Jeremy. Again, he is a landscape architect from Studio-MLA. So Jeremy, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you, Mariana, for the introduction. My name is Jeremy Jarin. I'm an associate at Studio-MLA, which is a landscape architecture practice that's based in Los Angeles, where we work on a lot of community-driven design, as well as typical landscape architecture and park projects in general. We're going to go over just a few things, what landscape architecture is, and just a few of our projects, just to highlight some things that we've done in the past few years. So let me get this started. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so hello and good afternoon. Like I mentioned, I'm Jeremy, and I wanted to thank LAEDC for the invitation to be a part of this event. I really do enjoy the opportunity to promote our field and to educate others on what we do, because it's a pretty unknown field. Okay, sorry. Want to start off with just giving a definition of what landscape architecture is. Just on the screen here, it says landscape architecture is the study and practice of designing environments of varying scale that encompasses elements of art, environment, architecture, engineering, and sociology. So as landscape architects, we are involved in the conceptual design of spaces that creates and enables life between the buildings. Everyone knows what architecture is. It's the design of buildings. Landscape architecture, you could actually just assume it's everything outside of the building. So there is a misunderstanding that landscape architecture is only gardening. When people hear the word landscape, they automatically think plants, but landscape actually encompasses everything in the exterior environment. We design parks, schools, playgrounds, streets, residential communities, and in our case, we even help design stadiums. Pushing it further, we take a look into complex topics such as water, habitat, biodiversity, education, food and agriculture, and so on and so forth. We develop these and make it an interconnected site to develop something that could stand the test of time. Resiliency is a really key word for us. It's the ability to recover from or adjust easily to change. We want our sites to be timeless, something that will last forever and have an impact on the community. So taking these complex ideas, we want to apply it not only to just specific sites, but apply it to these areas that will, feed off and keep growing and impact environments surrounding it. I want to take a step back and share a typical day-to-day and maybe just share what I do. This is a slide that goes over some of the design process that goes into even just modeling something as simple as a seat wall. First, we'll start off with sketching, just getting the forms right. We'll go into programs to model it, to see how it looks in three-dimensional space, because it looks a lot different after you draw it on pen and paper. We'll take a stab at adding materials through rendering, seeing how it looks in composition with everything around it. Once we have an idea of what we want to look like, we'll go to a phase called detailing. We'll figure out what all the parameters it takes to actually make it happen and provide it to contractors to help us make it a reality and make the building happen. Fabricating, we are involved in helping do quality control and quality checking. And so this image here at the bottom middle is showing us working with our precast concrete manufacturers. They created these big foam mock-ups of our seat walls. And so that we could get an idea, yeah, this is exactly what we want. Let's go forward with the final product, which you see in the bottom right. This is the actual installation of that bench that, you know, we sketched 3 years ago, seeing it installed at the SoFi Stadium site. So just this is one component of a project. We take everything into consideration as we go through the entire design process. Planting, paving, walls, overlooks, furniture, all that, and kind of make it combined. And we also fit it in with all of our collaborative workforces, such as the engineering side and the architecture side. I want to share this map to not only make you aware of the accredited landscape programs in California, but just to also give my background and how I started. I grew up in Orange County, you know, 20, 30 miles away from Los Angeles. I grew up wanting to stay in California because of the weather, obviously. And so I chose California's Cal Poly Pomona as my college directly out of high school. To be honest, I didn't know what landscape architecture was when I originally started. My uncle was an architect, so I had that interest in combining this side of art and math together. So in my opinion, architecture made the most sense. When it came to the day of orientation where we were filling out what our preferred major would be, I kind of panicked and realized, hey, I actually don't like buildings that much. And so luckily, right under that, it said landscape architecture. And I kind of checked it off on a whim just to try it out. And yeah, 4 years into the program, I ended up loving it, realizing I had a knack for it and really enjoyed what we do. And so Cal Poly Pomona is
there's 8 people on. There's 1, 2, 3 of us.
I would say Cal Poly Pomona is one of the most accessible colleges for a bachelor's program in California. Besides that, there is the Cal Poly SLO program. We have different emphases on what we do because Cal Poly Pomona is really close to Los Angeles. There's a more, I would say, urban focused design theory, whereas in the Cal Poly SLO area, they really get into the research and just the landscape portion itself. Other than that, if you want to go further north, there's UC Davis has a bachelor's program. And all the other ones here, like UC Berkeley, UC USC, and Cal Poly Pomona have master's degrees as well. If you don't want to stay in California, there's almost 100 accredited programs throughout the United States. A lot in California, as you can see here, Texas, and especially New York. New York has a big following. I would say the landscape architecture programs are more popularized on the East Coast, but obviously it is a older profession, and so growing, but still growing, and so there's always room for change. So that's the general overview of what landscape architecture is and just the programs that are available to you. Now I'm going to talk about our practice. So as I mentioned earlier, I work at Studio-MLA. It's a landscape architecture and urban design firm that's focused in Los Angeles. We do have a San Francisco office where we're trying to put our foot out the door and, you know, expand our reaches. But being central and local to LA is something that really attracted me to the studio. Sometimes when we're working on projects, we may find ourselves working on projects in Dubai or China or something like that. It's really nice to work at a firm where you could really be a 20-minute drive away from a site. You're working on these plans for 2 years of your life, and just being able to drive 20 minutes to see how it all comes together and make sure everything's going well is a lot more meaningful to me than, getting on a call with a 12-hour time difference across the planet and trying to figure out if they're doing it right or not. So I got a little ahead of myself, but just to talk about Studio-MLA as a practice, we live and practice by these core values. We think holistically, looking to build places that create justice and equity, delight and prosperity. We do so through working collaboratively with nature, transforming places to perform multiple purposes at once, and designing them to adapt with durability for future generations. As landscape architects, we are trained to work in the confluence of nature and architecture. We see design and the creation of outdoor public spaces as a way to advocate for communities. We look for opportunities to tell the stories that are layered within places, stories about people, neighborhoods, hope and conflict, water, air, ecology, and empowerment. As multidisciplinarians, we are trained to think and design with systems in mind. We must understand not only the environmental issues such as climate change, drought, wildfire, and sea level rise, but the social impacts these issues place on food security, public health, economics, and community well-being. Political will is a vital piece to this puzzle. And so this is a pretty important slide for us personally, which is our vision, which is advocacy by design. It means leadership leads to vision, policy leads to funding, funding leads to planning, and ultimately design empowers and materializes. This is a slide that really speaks to not only just designing a site, which is what we do on a day-to-day, but actually how to get these projects and how to get them built and who are the right people to talk to make sure this happens. Here's just a slide. Here's a slide of just showing a gallery of some of our projects that we've done in the past. So through advocacy to clients, communities, elected officials, and nonprofits about the pressing issues of our time and how they impact our lives. Through advocacy, we create excitement about potential projects and we help find the means to make them happen. And through advocacy, we communicate the success and promise of our design ideas. So let's dive into Los Angeles and just cities in general and how they work. In terms of urban design and city fabric, we really want to build resilience. We want to care about water. We want to care about pollution in the air. We want to build community. We want to employ a good planting strategy and really work with this urban ecology. As I mentioned, we are started our practice in Los Angeles. Just here are some quick tidbits about LA in case you don't know. Population of the city of Los Angeles is just under 4 million people. The county has about 10 million. It's the most populous county in the US. It includes 88 cities like Santa Monica, West Hollywood, Pomona. As you can imagine, this many jurisdictions can complicate governance and decision making. So our studio has been involved in dozens of revitalization projects in the Los Angeles River watershed. For those that don't know, LA has a river. When you see it, it doesn't look like a river though. It is a long concrete channel that spans 52 miles that stretches from the Sepulveda Basin and outfalls into the Long Beach Port of Long Beach. Historically, through LA, this river obviously was not channelized. It didn't have concrete walls. It was an ephemeral river because of our weather and our climate. It never had a thorough path it followed. And so in the quite a long time ago, quite a few years ago, the channelization of the LA River happened to prevent flooding for adjacent homes. I would say the plan was a little bit extreme in terms of its reinforcement. And so my office has taken a stab at creating a master plan 15 years ago, finding the usefulness and the opportunity of this concrete channel, finding places like something called this G2 Taylor Yard site along the Los Angeles River. Taylor Yard is this post-industrial site. It's a former railway station, and it's the former headquarters of the Southern Pacific Railroad operation. The site opportunities are tremendous. We're in close proximity to downtown. We're adjacent to the Rio de Los Angeles State Park, California State Parks bow tie parcel, and the Learning Academy as well. There's numerous site constraints as well, such as the high-speed rail tracks, high-tension wires, and contaminated soils. We did a lot of multifaceted community engagement to draw students and families from the high school. We hosted meetings right at the school. We toured the site. A comprehensive community survey in numerous languages was held also. Here's a catalog of what we heard, organized into categories. These program elements were dispersed through the site in each concept. So activities, recreation, social events, structures, natural space, sustainability elements, mobility, access, and comfort. The site tour, this is images of the site tour and community meetings. It has a pretty impactful community. A lot of people want to see and get educated on what we are doing, and also provide their feedback so that we know what matters to the people around. When we design sites, we can't just grab a pen and paper and just start drawing. We really have to take a look at the context and who actually lives there so that we can provide input in a site that makes sense. We distilled the programs into these 3 themes: urban ecology, people, site, and river history. From here, as we go through design processes, we like to provide different options. And so taking a look back at the Taylor Yard site, it's this kind of almost crescent-shaped area right next to the river. We provided some three different strategies with all different themes just to get some ideas going. So first one is island, an island for biodiversity and resiliency, the soft edge, an ecological edge for people and wildlife, and then the yards, a park at the heart of its community. So really kind of stretching the gamut of, do we want to be more wildlife and ecologically focused, or do we want to be really, really people focused where we provide the typical amenities in a typical park? Here's a proposed plan that we produced, coming up with the circulation pathways, where different infrastructures are, different play areas, maybe different community decks, river decks, overlooks, amphitheaters. These are all factors that go into a site, and just hearing the feedback from the community, we understand what we're looking at. Seeing a plan on the screen may seem, I guess, in my opinion at least, may seem easy at first, but when you're taking a look at this, you could see this 5 acres mark on the bottom right-hand part of the screen. This site is 50 acres. So it's a lot of place to really take account of and really think through. So quite challenging of a project, but it's a fun project nonetheless. Here's some rendering of a before and after, taking a look at that channelized portion in the before image on the left, seeing how that works with the river itself, and then seeing the opportunities. Can we create these terrace decks where people are able to walk on different levels and plant them in between, and with different opportunities for overlooks, seating, shade, and all that. Even areas for kayaking. If any of you are interested, there is a program called the Frog Spot where you could kayak the LA River in portions and really get educated on the history as well. Here's another before and after, showing it at a more aerial view, showing what it looks like now on the top, and then our concept at the bottom. So really getting rid of what it was before, all the contaminated soils, remediating those soils, and then providing a community amenity in the future. This is something that's called a perspective axonometric, where we really take a look at how does this look? How do the levels change? What can we plant with? How do the paths look? What can be influenced? We are surrounded by nature in LA, but not everyone is able to visit or are aware of it. In another project nearby, you know, our clients at the MRCA wanted to provide a window to the mountains for the city residents who didn't otherwise have access to our neighborhood, nearby wilderness in the Santa Monica Mountains. This project is called Vista Hermosa. Vista Hermosa is a 10-acre urban nature park at the edge of a dense residential neighborhood just north of downtown Los Angeles. Here you can see the park's density, the city grid. As its name translates, Vista Hermosa was designed to provide beautiful views of downtown Los Angeles and a natural experience for those who have limited access to the city's natural surroundings in the Santa Monica Mountains. Really, before this park existed, there wasn't a really big park space in downtown, an accessible park space. So this was really one of those seminal projects that really got people to understand the value of green space and open space right next to their city. You see here, this is what it used to look like. It used to be a brownfield site. And then over many months, we worked with the city and numerous stakeholders to host these community workshops and shape really how the park works as a park. Here's some more images of the actual community engagement elements, like digging up dirt. This is what it looks like now. Vista Hermosa became the first public park to be constructed in downtown LA in 100 years, which was a huge achievement in and of itself. This park was a shift in design for the city. The park shows that play can be done on all types of surfaces. So not only the typical playground structures, but having this material, this soft material that's a little bit more natural, be this opportunity for play. There's sculpted topography that retains, treats, and captures rainwater as it falls in the system. A lot of the paving is permeable. Really, this site emphasizes the need for sustainability and how we could move forward in the future. This site provides a range of activities and local native habitats, such as the oak savanna, coastal sage scrubs, chaparral, and meadows to attract pollinator insects, birds, and small animals. The design shows that play can be done on all types. It has become an iconic place for weddings, graduations, proms, and Hollywood films. So this image on the left-hand side is probably one of our more popular images. This is where a lot of people who are going to prom take their photos just so they could get a scene immersed in nature, but also have the backdrop of the LA city skyline. This is our opening celebration, where it featured dancing and a speech by Mayor Villaraigosa, and outdoor educational programming from the MRCA, something they do in the park on a weekly basis. This is a park designed for everyone. This highly urbanized neighborhood now experiences nature within walking distance of home to see birds, butterflies, and more. The final projects I'm going to talk about is something that's not typical in landscape, but something that we've really grown accustomed to over the past decade or so. We're going to talk about stadiums as community resources. In Los Angeles, we have been engaged on 3 large stadiums and numerous sports facilities. If you had told us a long time ago that we would be working on these projects, we would have laughed, but have fallen in love with the kind of the uniqueness of it. So on the left, it's Bank of California's LAFC soccer stadium, which is now BMO Stadium. It's built with an expo park and juxtaposed next to 3 museums, like a historic football stadium and the Lucas Museum, which is another one of our projects that's upcoming. Dodgers baseball stadium. It's built on a hilltop in an asphalt environment in need of amenities. And SoFi Stadium that you may have seen in the Super Bowl last year, maybe not this year, but last year, which is a 15-year community planning effort that yielded a new center for community life in Inglewood. These are just some of the many factors to consider to transform stadiums into community resources to meet and elevate the city, the environment, and the culture, integrating it into the urban fabric, boosting city identity, political champions, social dividends, transportation access, building and landscape design. Stadium design and construction is deeply influenced by factors that challenge cities and developers to question what they stand and how they want the world to see them. Their response, their vision, connection with the community, and the courage they show can also become the key to their success. We're going to start with Dodger Stadium. We began work at Dodger Stadiums over 10 years ago. Every year or so, we kind of find new areas to improve. The design of the 260-acre site renovation to improve arrival and exit, the fan experience, and boost planting and habitat values. The site kind of looks like a baseball glove, and we kind of took that into consideration as we took a look at views and just how circulation happens in the spot in the space. The master plan took a phased approach. We broke it down into scales that we could, really deep dive and really concentrate on. We created intuitive circulation systems, direct wayfinding programs to clarify what arrival is and what exit is like. This is an example of a before and after also, just seeing how much asphalt there is versus really beautifying the edge and really creating something that people can access. So the top is an existing photo or what used to be existing. The bottom is a rendering, and this is what it looks like on a day-to-day basis during game days. The giant sculptures we designed and placed throughout the plaza have become fan favorites for photographs and selfies. People now traverse the stadium through vibrantly planted areas that promote biodiversity and green habitat connections. It's kind of a park within a park. It's a miraculous place to experience together, where thousands can watch the game while catching views to the San Gabriel Mountains to the north, and one of the most unique views of downtown Los Angeles to the south. In the foreground is Centerfield Plaza, part of our newest renovation phase. These are some images of it in a close-up view, where you could grab a bite or a drink. It also goes beyond food. There's a museum all incorporated into the buildings, engaging landscape plazas with attractions. And we also like being here ourselves. This is a photo of our Christmas party from 2 years ago. The perks of working on some of these places is we get to use them as our event spaces. It's a public place where Angelenos feel at home. They really get to be a part of their sports team and really just become integrated with it. Next project I'm going to talk about, and actually the last project I'll talk about, is the Hollywood Park site, which is home of the SoFi Stadium where the Rams and Chargers play. It's located 30 minutes from downtown, and overall the site is 300 acres. This is the location where you could see its proximity to LAX. So if you've ever flown into LAX, if you ever look down and you're on I think the right side of the plane or the left side, if you look down, you could see the stadium pretty easily. 300-acre master plan goes back to what it used to be. It used to be this historic racetrack 2 decades ago. The proposed plan really drew inspiration because of its lakes and its fields, but really modernized the approach. Hollywood Park as a whole is this big outer boundary. I'm not sure if you could see my mouse, but it's this bigger outer boundary. This triangular, elongated triangular shaped building is the SoFi Stadium itself. But this diagram really shows that what we want to do is create this public open space network that ties in all the future development that's going to happen around the stadium. So everything that's in that white cloudy graphic is actually going to be future development, like a multifamily, residential, or retail. This is an infill development. It includes some of the best stormwater management practices known to date. Pretty much every drop of water that falls on the site all flows into this man-made lake that we designed in the center. The park also serves as an important landscape infrastructure that is responsible for not only capturing the water, but using it for irrigation throughout and really boosting our plants. It's a closed loop system. We're capturing the water, using it for our planting, and our planting provides a space for people to enjoy shade or just visual aesthetic enjoyment. Part of our approach was to ensure that this site had a strong ecological aspect. So looking at this transect of ecologies in Southern California, we proposed this strategy where the Hollywood Park site presented a huge range of site conditions with its complexity. And due to its proximity to LAX, the stadium needed to adhere to some strict height limitations. And so the stadium itself is, if you've been there, is sunken into the ground. It's not only for the design aspect, it's also so that we aren't in the fly zone for all the planes that come across. There's a certain height restriction for that. And so we created this concept called the ground swell. The stadium planting was a huge part of the solution. Showing in this section, the taller mountain tree species are strategically placed for scale against the stadium. It's not only a stadium, it's kind of a botanical garden. And so these are the different plant communities that we really wanted to incorporate: the desert, the lower montane, upper montane, chaparral, and riparian. So we're taking a look at what's existing in nature and really applying it to a site that is man-made. We don't want to just replicate it, but we want to strategize on how it could really benefit our design approach. After employing this planting strategy, there were over 5,000 trees planted in just phase one, and different throughout this park, there's different collections, but 5,000 trees is a lot of trees. Here's the real thing. It's a park network with new life for its community, fans, and even the residents. The architects and the mayor and the development team put forward an ambitious plan to create space like no other, a surprising, amazing destination. Given the climate, 360 days, and the location not far from the ocean, our vision was to leverage Southern California's indoor-outdoor living for the stadium and the park, really being able to utilize this year-round and not really just be limited to being only an indoor space or only an outdoor space. Therefore, there's no walls. It's completely porous. It has shade, breezes. No digital environment program could have predicted the level of temperature comfort we achieved. So even though it might be like 90 degrees on a certain day on the outside, when you're in these canyons, we call this the canyons, when you're actually starting to submerge down into the stadium portion itself, the temperature gets a lot cooler just because of how airflow works. Lake Park is the heart of the district. It incorporates a lot of stormwater capture strategies, like I mentioned before. There's planted canyons to help you move through an experience. You could also rent out some spaces for different community events throughout the proximity of the stadium. These are some of our images showing that how we doubled it as a botanical garden. The lake, as well as the bioswale, storm drains and arroyos, all collect stormwater that gets filtered and by wetland vegetation and soil, so it can be used to irrigate. This is an image of those roof touchdown points for the SoFi Stadium, creating even areas around here where it's not only visually aesthetic, but it serves a purpose in collecting that stormwater. Altogether, what is possible to live in harmony with nature, to manage stormwater, provide flood attenuation, improve access to recreation and nature, increase habitat, and decrease the urban heat island effect, or decrease the urban heat island effect, fix transportation systems, and ensure the security of our resources, all while promoting the celebration of culture and connecting communities. California is a leader in environmental legislation with programs like LA 100. The city aligns with the state's rigorous waste and water management, renewable energy, and environmental protection benchmarks. As advocates, we help by positioning our projects with the regulations, helping to find funding sources to enhance ecological values. As landscape architects, we have this opportunity and responsibility. I just want to leave you with this. As global citizens, each of us have our voices and our creative abilities to build what we need to solve for climate change and create resilient, equitable, nature-based solutions for communities and ecologies. This is important work, and we all need to have the courage to urgently act now. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share the efforts of our team. That ends the presentation, and I will now take the time to invite questions.
Thank you, Jeremy, for your presentation. I have learned a lot about what landscape architecture actually means. So thank you again for sharing your in-depth expertise with all of us. And anybody who has any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask away or enter your questions in the chat as well. Lisa, Troy, Gore, Pamela, do you guys have any questions?
I work for Studio-MLA, so I pretty much know.
Oh.
It's all good.
You can ask as well. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I was going to say was maybe there might be some people who might not know what a master plan means or brownfield sites. So those are the things that came to mind for me for people who may not know exactly what that means.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't mention terminology like that. And you know, this is something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's kind of like learning the ABCs for me. So a master plan is a long range plan where we come up with concepts and just the initial studies on what we want an entire community or a development to look like in the future. It could be very specific, or it could be really just ideas initially in terms of how we want to strategize. But we also want to create logic to it. We want to create parameters because we're developing these things over large sites. You know, we come up with our own strategies like, hey, maybe every mile or so we have to make sure we include a, you know, an overlook area so that people could look out onto the river. Maybe every half mile we always incorporate you know, a water station, you know, so people could hydrate as they're biking across. So things like that really go into account when considering how to design a master plan. Brownfield site, that is a site that was historically polluted. It is designated a brownfield site. There's different terminology, and forgive me, I can't remember exactly the difference between brown versus the other colors, but pretty much it was a polluted site. And we have to, when we receive sites like that, we have to really tackle that issue of how to remediate, how to clean, how to fix the site before we actually show what we want to show on the plan.
Mariana, if I can ask a few questions, as I mentioned earlier, it will be shared. So I want to kind of throw a question out that I know a lot of students usually ask. And my question is, what type of people succeed in your position? And what are your pros and cons of the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. The type of people that succeed are just people who like to push boundaries, people who have creative minds, but also like to get things done. I would say a lot of the people that get into this field are like to do a little bit of everything. They like to be involved in all sorts of things. I mentioned how like, you know, we're involved in so many little aspects. We try to be not experts, but at least knowledgeable of all these little things and just try to apply it and create something cohesive and something that makes sense and connected. Anyone like that. Also, people have find their niche in the field. Maybe you only like planting, and which is fine. Like maybe you really become an expert. Then that kind of leads to the path of, do I want to be an arborist? Do I want to do this, but also apply my design background to it? You could get into like only stormwater. When I started here 8 years ago as an intern. It was my first job out of school. And so I was still in school as I was in the office. And so the position itself was, I was only a 3D modeler. I was only working in this one program for that duration of that project because they needed some help, which is what I wanted. That's all I was comfortable with. It was my first big boy job. So it was something that, you know, like put me in my comfort zone. And then, you know, afterwards, like they realized and hired me on. They're like, hey, he knows other stuff, so let's make him do other stuff. So it was, you know, you can find those moments where you have expertise in something and also find happiness in that. And pros and cons of the field. I mean, pros are, you know, you get to do something fun. You get to use your creative juices, but also you really have to think logically. How is this going to be built? I can't just draw something. It has to be buildable. You get to work with a lot of different people. You get to work on, you know, the really artsy fartsy people, and then you get to work with, you know, boots to the ground type of people, like who install. And it's really fun to be in the middle of that. I would say cons are, you know, it's not people really understand what you do. And so it takes time to educate some people on that we don't only plant. And so stuff like that. It does happen on a daily basis, but you know, we're used to it, and we enjoy the opportunity to share what we do. Mhm.
Thank you for your feedback. I have one more question. What advice would you give to the students who are pursuing a career in the industry?
Yeah, it's my advice is just do it. It's fun. But I think if you do want to succeed, really, when you start to get into it, really be curious. Don't be stressed out. Everyone's in the same boat. Find resources that are out there that could help you. I know something for us, when you are in a program, in a design program, it's less about test taking for the major portion of it. It's more about projects and how to get those and how to do that. So really figuring out how to manage your time, working with your group members is a big thing. Learning how to present will come throughout it. Just being willing to take criticism and know that they're not attacking you, they're helping you. And just if you get past that, I think anyone will succeed in this field. Just really being willing to hear feedback and just incorporating it in the way that you want to incorporate it in your project. Yeah, in terms of finding a program, and there's some resources out there for our program specifically. It's called ASLA.org. They are the governing body for landscape architecture in America. So that's a good site as well if you want a more tangible resource.
Thank you so much. I'll kick it back to Mariana or anybody else that has any other questions.
Thank you, Jose. I know someone just joined. John, I know there were some difficulties with the link, but if you have any questions, we will be sharing the recording, just so you know, John. But if you have any questions for Jeremy, feel free to unmute and ask.
I haven't been here long enough to even know what to ask, but if you want to, you can send me the recording, that'd be great.
Of course. And then Jeremy, another question that I think might be useful for those who watch the recording is, now that you have some experience, what would you recommend or what advice would you give to students who are kind of starting on their educational journey? Anything from like coursework they should take or avoid, or conferences to attend, anything like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If you are pursuing this and you are in the middle of it, I would say, I also am part of the recruitment and onboarding team, and so I know what it takes to get hired. One thing I would say for our field specifically is the more computer programs you know, the more marketable you are. We delve into a lot of things from Illustrator, Photoshop, AutoCAD, Rhino, these rendering programs called Lumion. Just being well versed, you don't have to be experts, but just have an idea of how to use them. It helps tremendously with our workflow and efficiency. So I would say that me learning programs in school, if I didn't learn that one 3D program, which was no one learned at that time, I wouldn't be here right now. And so, yeah, it's a program called Rhino, which I also taught at UCLA extension program for a few years. But it's when I was in my last year, we were guinea pigs. Like one of our professors was like, "Hey, do you want to learn this?" And I said yes. And because of that, I got hired. So, you never know what's going to be the new up and coming thing. Like VR was really big a couple years ago, like getting used to that. Animation's still really big. Just so learning new programs is really helpful. In terms of how it works, in terms of your curriculum, they will always give you introductory courses, but it's expected to learn the programs on your own still. The professors that you get in design studios may or may not know the program anymore. So it's really up to the student to take initiative and learn on their own. Obviously, there's resources that they could learn from, like, LinkedIn Learning and stuff like that. That's how I learned Rhino, was lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning. So really accepting that, it's not going to be handed to you. You have to put in the extra effort. Just be prepared for that mentality, I think will make you successful. Also being involved in any organization that you're in. So I mentioned ASLA is the governing body of what we do. In school, there's a student chapters. And so being involved in the student chapter is a big deal. Like that's how I got to make connections and even meet some of the staff from here through like firm visits and stuff. So when I was in my last year. So just being connected, just getting out of your shell, talking to people, not being afraid to ask putting your pride aside, not being afraid to take criticism. It's all helpful for you in the long run.
Thank you, Jeremy. I don't have any other questions for you. Are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share before we conclude our webinar?
I just want to thank everyone. It was really fun to go over this. As you could see from the first slides, it's really, landscape architecture is a confusing field, and so it was a good opportunity to try to figure out how to like condense it in a 40-minute presentation. So it was a good opportunity, and I thank everyone, and I hope at least some of you consider landscape architecture in the future.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, we really appreciate your time. For you, Rodrigo, Lisa, and the whole Studio-MLA team for coming on, and we'll share the recording. And if we have any specific questions from students, I'll reach out to you via email. But once again, thank you for taking the time to present to our students. We really appreciate it and hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.